First, we'll open your eyes. Then we'll open your minds. We'll pull the wool from over your eyes and give you a peek behind the curtain to show you the world for what it is and what it might be. This is Beyond Normal Views.
This is Beyond Normal Views. I am Alex, and my blood type is coffee.
And I am James. And there is a scant 60 miles between you and the endless void of space, buried by nothing but thin air and water vapor.
All right, it's been a very strange week. The presidential race is turning more and more idiocratic.
Trump almost literally said the phrase, "Do what we all know must be done."
And he likes titties like Detroit.
Yeah, that was a fun one. I appreciate it.
That blew up the internet right there.
Yeah, but you know the veiled threats to full-on political assassinations. Nah, it's trending on Twitter.
And another thing trending on Twitter, Edward Snowden is either missing or dead. He tweeted out a few days ago, anybody who's talked to him and been in contact with him since 2013, that they need to get in touch with him, it's time. And then a few days later he tweeted out the dead man's code, which a lot of hackers do to indicate that they are either dead or kidnapped.
I'm not fully aware of the hacker's code.
It's like a 64 character code.
Is this like a dead man switch? Like if you don't click in or log into a certain thing within 30 days or however many days he said, it sends out an automatic message?
I believe so. It's when you're dealing with something like this with somebody who not everybody can contact and the mainstream media won't talk about it.
Yeah.
You pretty much have to rely on message boards and like some of them conspiracy websites, and so it really kind of maybe.
Well, excellent segue into our topic today: the lamestream media.
Yeah, corporate dinosaur media,
and its relevancy today, and what we find, where we find our media sources, because it sure the fuck isn't Fox or MSNBC or really anything else that's on TV.
No, they cover 3 to 4 stories a week, and they have their talking head shows, or they shove their views down your throat.
Well, it's also that 24-hour news cycle where there will be the big thing, which might be tragic on a scale in itself, like the missing airliner. Heard that for a solid week.
Yeah.
And almost nothing else.
Pretty much. One night in 1883, at a gathering of New York journalists at the Twilight Club, chief editorial writer of the New York Sun, a job he once held at the New York Times, John Swinton, was asked to give a toast about the independent press, and this is how he replied. "There is no such thing at this day of the world's history in America as an independent press. You know it and I know it. There is not one of you who dares to write your honest opinions, and if you did, you know beforehand that it would never appear in print. I am paid weekly for keeping my honest opinion out of the paper I am connected with. Others of you are paid similar salaries for similar things, and any of you who would be so foolish as to write your honest opinions would be out on the streets looking for another job. If I allowed my honest opinions to appear in one issue of my paper, before 24 hours my occupation would be gone. The business of journalists is to destroy the truth, to lie outright, to pervert, to vilify, to fawn at the feet of Mammon, and to sell his country and his race for his daily bread. You know it and I know it. And what folly is this, toasting an independent press? We are tools and vassals of rich men behind the scenes. We are the jumping jacks. They pull the strings and we dance. Our talents, our possibilities, and our lives, all the property of other men. We are intellectual prostitutes." In some places, major multinational corporations own media stations and outlets. Often, many media institutions survive on advertising fees, which can lead to the media outlet being influenced by various corporate interests. Other times, the ownership interest may affect what is and what is not covered on air, or on the radio, or in the newspapers. Stories can end up being biased or omitted so as not to offend the advertisers or the owners. The ability for citizens to make informed decisions is crucial for a free and functioning democracy, but now becomes threatened by such concentration in ownership. The idea of corporate media itself may not be a bad thing, for it can foster healthy competition and provide a check against governments. However, the concern is when a concentration of ownership due to the risk of increased economic and political influence that itself can be unaccountable. Interlocking directorates is another issue. Interlocking directorates is when a director of one company may sit on a board of another company, as pointed out by U.S. media watchdog Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting. For example, media corporations share members of the board of directors with a variety of other large corporations, including banks, investment companies, oil companies, healthcare companies, pharmaceutical companies, and technology companies. But when big media is owned by big business, there is less criticism of big business or related political issues in big government. Before you believe what you see in the mainstream media news echo chamber, bear in mind that propaganda leading up to and throughout the Iraq War allowed journalists like Jesse Ventura and Phil Donahue to get fired. Well, today in America, as far as our news choices, when you turn on the TV, it's a Mediaopoly. It went from 150 corporations owning the media in 1983 to 5 to 6 owning them now. And it should break all kinds of antitrust laws, but unfortunately, the revolving door between the FCC and the corporate media, it benefits them. People get rich off their jobs.
Absolutely, and it's been, advertisement has a lot to do with it as well. The opening of mass markets to just complete liars. The shadow money that plays into that. Even what we think of as more independent news agencies like Al Jazeera turns out have big money behind them. A large portion of Al Jazeera is owned by the Qatari royal family and has been accused on many occasions of being a propaganda host for the Qatari royal family. Interestingly enough, AJ Plus has taken down their YouTube site, and they're posting videos solely on Twitter because of some of the backlash that they've got after some of the really odd videos that they were putting out, especially regarding social justice and some of the extreme leftist movements that we've been seeing recently.
Wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, it's I watch a lot of YouTube.
So do I.
I think we end up on different sides. So, what are your sources of alternative media?
My favorite right now is Redacted Tonight, which is on RT America, hosted by Lee Camp, and it's the daily show of the alternative media. It's news with a comedic twist, but it's very relevant. Like, they're pro Bernie Sanders until he, dropped out, and then now they're pro Jill Stein, and then they'll talk about the libertarians. And they have another show on that channel named Watching the Hawks, hosted by Tyrell Ventura, Jesse's son.
Oh, yeah.
Sean Stone, who's Oliver Stone's son, who happens to be a Muslim, by the way.
Interesting.
I asked him on Facebook, and he's like, yep. I had a nice little conversation with him, and it's amazing how some of these personalities in the alternative media are approachable. Like, I've talked to Lee Camp before, and he's a very funny guy. And also one of the other hosts, Tabitha Wallace of Watching the Hawks. They tend to lean more to the progressive side, but they're very relevant. They talk about very relevant issues like the Black Lives Matter movement that's going on right now. They talk about the third party options, and then they will break down at the last minute of the show and say, and this is what the other news networks are talking about, and just kind of make fun of it.
Oh yeah, like there's a for not even a news site at all. It's a YouTube channel called Bartians. Two individuals who have their own YouTube channels, Stuart Ashen and Barry from My Virgin Kitchen. And they do sharticles. And it's something they do on occasion when they have them, of taking some of the most vapid news articles, like clearly there was nothing going on today, like chicken crosses center of center of town crosswalk, or ridiculous things like that. My particular where was I? Were you done?
Favorite alternative media sources?
Alternative media sources being Dan Carlin, with his common sense talks. Little spotty about when it comes out. He just put out 5.5 hours of his hardcore history, and so he's missed a lot that's happened that he would normally talk about in his common sense episodes. But it's been almost a year since he's come out with anything from hardcore history, so he felt like he needed to push this through, and he did. But I'm expecting a common sense thread to come out very quickly.
I download that too, that podcast.
Mm-hmm.
A couple really good informative podcasts out there. You can also find their stuff on YouTube. Is Morning Monarchy. If you go to MediaMonarchy.com, James Evan Pilato, he's very relevant. He breaks down the news that you won't hear elsewhere, and he also does another show with James Corbett Report. Very intelligent man. He Canadian living in Japan.
Okay.
But he talks a lot about economics and about how what we're looking at on TV might not necessarily be the whole story.
Oh, absolutely. I intend, like, what you're talking about too is like more even planned and put together, like news shows. I like the more personal things where I will, if I want to hear about news in Germany, I will look up German YouTubers talking about politics in Germany.
And you get a different side.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll probably get a little bit of hate for this, but some of my favorite YouTubers where I get that sort of foreign news source. And of course, when you're talking about individuals, you have to watch out and understand their particular slant. But that's with any news source.
Yeah, and follow the money and see who owns.
Yeah, well, that's why I like these individual channels. Like these are people that rely off. Like they have a Patreon page. They have their ad revenue. These are people that are self-funded. They're small channels. 100,000 viewers. 200,000 maybe that many. German news. It's great to go to. Kraut T is one of them. He got doxxed recently, so he's sort of on hiatus, considering all of the German laws about some of the things that he discusses, like the migrant crisis and the shadier things, like having former Stasi members running names and addresses of dissidents to the German government.
Free speech is not that common over there.
Absolutely, yeah.
They have to be careful what they say.
Yeah, absolutely. But it still goes too far. It's to the point you can't even criticize or voice your fears about some of the things that are happening with the migrants there. So during the Brexit, there was this whole interesting showdown between Sargon of Akkad and Thunderfoot, foot spelled with 2 zeros, who is a scientist in Europe. He was very much with the Remain camp. Sargon of Akkad was very much with the Leave camp. both had very good arguments, very good reasonings, not at all the sort of buzzword phrases clashes. Both of them asking for, show me where you got those statistics from, where did you get those from? Well, I didn't have to. Both sides had flaws to their arguments. Both sides had very, very good reasons for their arguments, and it was a great thing to watch. I got more information about the Brexit from watching these two individuals hash it out on the internet than I did from any corporate media source.
That's the case with a lot of podcasters too.
Yeah.
And this is actually on over 800 stations, I want to say, on the radio, Coast to Coast AM. It's a late night talk show. It has several hosts, and they have anywhere between 1 hour and 4 hour interviews on that show. Of course, with commercials and everything, but you get almost a book's worth of knowledge from some of these guests.
Yeah.
Like there's a guy who goes all over the world, embeds himself. He was embedded with the rebels in Syria. I think he's over in Somalia right now. Robert Young Pelton. You will learn more about what's going on overseas from that man than you will watching all the news channels.
No, now that's an interesting thing. Talk about funding. Like, you need money to be embedded into a place like that, especially for protection. How does he?
He's a journalist, documentary filmmaker, author.
Oh, well,
And
he's quite a lot going through. Probably self-funds.
Yes, and he also sells knives.
Okay.
And like survival gear. And one of the missions that he did was rescuing people who were trying to flee conflict zones, who were basically stranded in the ocean.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the guy's a hero. And just, you learn about all these different personalities and then start following them on Twitter, or if they have a YouTube channel, or following them on Facebook, and some of these people will talk to you. That's what I love about the alternative media and the citizen media, basically. It's the citizens have started to take over the apparatus because we have the internet now, and the internet has changed the game. It's alternative flows of information. We never had access to this when we were growing up. All we had, you sat down and you had
the nightly news.
Yeah,
that was
Tom Brokaw and.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, the morning newspaper and the nightly TV show, the nightly news show. There's NPR. There was always AM radio.
I really liked. I'm Paul Harvey. Remember Paul Harvey?
I do not remember Paul Harvey.
He was on a local radio station, AM 760, I believe, in Detroit.
Okay.
And he would do, like, around noon, he would do his little news for the day. And he was this really cool old man. If you ever want to hear something interesting, go on YouTube and look up. He did it in the 60s. Paul Harvey did not a video, but an audio of If I Were the Devil. And he goes over all this stuff that basically started happening right after that.
Interesting. Wow.
And how America would turn into what it's turning into right now.
Well, because back before the internet, it seemed like the most alternative that there was AM radio, which doesn't, because I may be wrong, but it was my understanding that AM radio stations are more heavily regulated by the FCC than FM radio stations. I'm not sure exactly why that is. I think AM broadcasts travel larger distances than FM broadcasts do, even though they're more easily interfered with. If you're driving under a bridge, your FM station will still come in completely clear, but your AM station will fade out and then come back in.
And also, when talk radio started to change and the television personality started to change, are you familiar with the fairness doctrine?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Where if somebody has a certain viewpoint, then somebody else with the opposite viewpoint should get equal airtime. And then they get pretty much threw it under the bus in the Reagan administration, which is also the same time when corporate media became more corporate. A lot of it was under Reagan, a lot of deregulation.
Yeah, and you have, you know, I remember you were mentioning to me off the air. If a story came across critical of General Motors, and General Motors funded a large portion of a particular network, maybe you wouldn't hear that story.
Yeah. Yeah, Disney and ABC's was infamous for that.
Mm.
And yeah, some other good shows, Abby Martin, Empire Files. You can find that on YouTube. She used to host Breaking the Set on RT America, and her last few shows, they went to Cuba just to film and ask questions to see what Cuba was like. And then she came back, and then they canceled her show. And it was...
Regards to the embargo?
I don't know why.
Wow.
It was she was very emotional on her last show. And it sounded like maybe they parted ways, or creative differences. But RT America is also owned by the Kremlin.
Oh.
And she was very critical of Putin. And the guy who was in charge of RT said that the journalists on their network can say whatever they want. But I don't know if they had something to do with it. But she is a tough girl, and she embeds herself. She covers some really tough issues. Mm-hmm. I highly recommend Empire Files. That's what's nice. Is most of the stuff you can get for free.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, as long as you have the internet.
Well, and then you also have things like Vice. I followed Vice for a long time. I think in the past couple of years, I think they've kind of gone the way of Young Turks. I liked the Young Turks for a while.
I like them too. They're I don't agree with them on everything, but they're entertaining.
They're entertaining, yes, but I think something about the dynamic of the Young Turks. Same thing with Vice. The dynamics of their what am I saying? The dynamics of their videos, their writings changed, and it started voicing more, I think, irrelevant things. Vice was talking about, hey, let's go to Liberia and see what's happening with these old warlords in Liberia, and interesting, sort of documentary news kind of things of places of the world you never hear about. But then, the next article you read, we took DMT. Here's what happened. And
that might have to do with they became more and more popular, so they just wanted to throw more material out there, and the more material you throw out there, the more watered down it's going to get. Mm. And also they're trying to get their own TV channel, so they might have had their arms twisted a little bit to change.
Yeah.
And did you know that, I think it was back in March, that Vice bought History Channel and H2?
No.
Yeah, and they have a show on YouTube, and it's a bunch of guys getting high and watching Ancient Aliens.
Don't give me more things to waste my time on.
It is so stupid, but it's just like, all right, I guess I could just sit here and kill some brain cells along with them.
Well, corporate advertising within media. The Learning Channel used to be, a state-owned institution for the communication of, science and education. Went private with private funding, and now we have Honey Boo Boo.
Don't make fun of her.
And, well, you see the same thing happening with the History Channel.
Yeah.
And in the phases that History Channel had varied documentary style things. They were cheap as shit. They ran on unpaid internships. But they still, even with that, they ran fairly quality, if not low budget, documentaries on a wide variety of things. But then you started running into, it became the Hitler Channel for a couple of years. If you remember that, it was just all World War II all the time. And they split off. They had their History 2 channel, and that became, all.
It became the Conspiracy Channel, almost.
No, because now the regular History Channel has, Ancient Aliens, and was it the White House Files or the Book of America? Or is that Discovery?
I think it was the Book of America. That one was pretty entertaining.
Yeah, but it's still that. And then the show that Jesse Ventura hosted.
It was a conspiracy show.
Yeah, it was conspiracy. It was Jesse Ventura. It was so, but that one was so over the top.
Yes.
That was clearly just hawking it to, you know, we're gonna get this kind of attention. It had no substance whatsoever.
I thought it was overproduced. It seemed like you would get 10 minutes of material in an hour.
Well, and after every commercial break, they would have this
Recap.
3-4 minute recap of what just happened. In an hour-long show, you have 15 minutes of content?
Yeah. Unfortunately, a lot of documentary shows are like that.
Yeah.
Which is why we like the internet, because you can find better stuff.
Exactly. Well, you have independent producers doing their own thing.
I really miss him. He hasn't, I don't think, did anything on PBS in a couple years, but Bill Moyers.
Yeah.
He's very, very good interviewer. And it was very relevant. It was like, I can turn on the TV and learn something. Yes. Well, yeah, cable TV's just gotten so watered down. We got so many channels, and it seems like less and less.
So many channels. The 24-hour news cycle. They are pandering more towards their advertisers than they are to their audience, or they are pandering to the lowest common denominator of their audiences, the ones that
LCD TV,
ADD TV.
Wait, what were we talking about?
Oh, a bird. And how many kids with ADD does it take to turn in a light bulb? You want to go for a bike ride?
Oh, look, a shiny squirrel.
Remember when pharmaceutical companies were allowed to directly market to individuals through TV ads?
Yeah, and you know that pharmaceutical advertising is banned in every country but New Zealand and America?
Seriously? No. Oh, that's one I did not know.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Are food companies advertising in a way that pharmaceutical companies would love to advertise in? Like, I'm thinking Arby's, or Makes Mouths Happy, or Sargento has their cheese with a happy family, and like, this will make you happy. Eat this food product and you'll be better.
Yeah, oh man, I couldn't imagine if I ate McDonald's all the time. You wouldn't be able to get me to stop laughing and having a good time.
Happy Meal, I'm loving it.
And they're advertising a lot in the Olympics right now. Like, they're switching over their food. They're like, we're sorry we were making crappy food for all them years. We're going to make some changes. And they're not even going to be done making the changes till 2025.
Yeah.
Like, try to get rid of the antibiotics and, using steroids to grow the animals. And
Nothing.
The most trusted name in news, The Onion. It's funny, on Facebook how fast some people will share stories that are from, like, nationalreport.net, I think is one of them, where it's just a complete hoax website.
Well, the Onion bullshit that comes up on Twitter, and it still makes its way into, lamestream media.
And then some of the stuff will become water cooler talk, and then it's like, all right, I got to go do my own research to see if this is a real story. I've been guilty myself of reposting stuff, and then when someone would call me out on it, I would say thank you, and then, I learned my lesson, so now I find myself I have to do a lot more research, and I do.
Snopes is the best website on the internet.
Do you trust them?
I do. I actually do. They explain the history behind it, and they have, again, the different ratings of, yes, this is true, here's why. It's unsubstantiated, and yes, this is false, here's the origin of it. So, I trust Snopes.
Yeah, I do want to eventually do a show. I wouldn't mind doing a documentary on who watches the detectives.
Who watches the Watchmen?
Who watches who watches the Watchers? Yeah, who watches the detectives? You know, like a lot of these fact-checking sites, some of them you find out are actually, they have an agenda, you know, whether it's left or right wing. I think down the road, it would be good to investigate that.
Yeah, it would be. It's
a follow the money thing. At the
I
end
don't know.
of the day.
The media that I end up consuming tends to be, yeah, that's such a weird turn of phrase. The media that I consume, I tend to be very aware of what slant it's taking. Like if I'm reading a BuzzFeed article, I know that there is a very specific political and social lens that is filtered through.
Yeah, media spin.
Yeah, and the same thing going to the Guardian does the same thing. Gawker is declared bankruptcy, and who was it?
Oh, that's because they
Hulk
showed the Hulk
video.
Hogan sex tape. Yeah,
and declared that was
wait a minute, brother,
in the public interest. I think that's kind of a dangerous side of new media too, is that you do have the BuzzFeeds and the Gawkers that pop up that have a vested interest in not portraying the entire the truth and the facts of something, but have an agenda to push.
Got to get them rage clicks, man. Yeah, and it's getting tougher with all these alternative flows of information and more sources to find the truth. Because there's misinformation, there's disinformation, and then it gives you a headache because it's like you need to get a PhD to do research in all these various subjects.
Honestly, a double-edged sword. There are going to be massive numbers of people that simply eat it up, that say, "Oh, this is edgy. I'm going to listen to, where am I going to go? MTV is all edgy now. I'm going to pay attention to what they say on MTV's news channel," and so the worst garbage comes off of that.
They have a news channel now?
Yes.
Oh.
They have an MTV.
Do they have a music channel?
Not since like '97.
And that goes back to, TLC used to be the Learning Channel. Discovery used to be the Discovery Channel. And it's like everything got flipped over on its head. And these channels are not what they claim to be.
Rednecks in the Woods. History Channel, Discovery Channel, TLC. Now we get Rednecks in the Woods.
Ah, thank God for Netflix.
We have Swamp People, Moonshiners, the Duck one, Duck Dynasty.
Oh, yeah.
The Bigfoot Hunters. There's a Bigfoot Hunter show. Joe Rogan has. Oh, Joe Rogan.
Yes.
Yes.
We're both Joe Rogan fans.
Yeah. There's another fantastic one. Also funny as hell. He has a great bit about going out and following some of the Sasquatch hunter guys. It's really sad.
He had his own show.
Joe Rogan Experience. Still does.
Oh, it's still on
there?
Yeah,
he's still podcast Joe Rogan Experience.
No, not his podcast. I mean on TV.
Fear Factor?
No, it was like a documentary show, and it was...
Yeah, that's what the one that he's talking about in the stand-up, where he was following the Bigfoot hunters and just how sad it was.
Yeah, and Rogan will say some relevant things.
Yeah.
And then mix comedy in there, which makes it easier to take your news.
Mm-hmm.
Like John Oliver is probably my favorite right now.
Oh, yeah. I think John Oliver has
Tonight.
picked up the torch for Jon Stewart.
Yep.
Jon Stewart was a big loss.
Yes.
Stephen Colbert was a big loss. Wait, shit, is this show still going?
He is
Colbert.
on CBS. He took over for Letterman.
That's right, yeah. So the Colbert Report is gone, and Jon Stewart's off, and that's a big loss. Though it was funny, they still covered actual very hard news stories.
Yeah, and The Daily Show, Trevor Noah's okay, but
He doesn't have the personality.
No.
He does not have the same, what is it, like, what is stage presence.
Well, and those are some big shoes to fill.
Yeah. Yeah. October, Royal Oak, Henry goddamn Rollins.
Ooh! Another relevant man.
$30. I'm gonna go.
I've wanted to see him.
Yeah.
He just tells it like it is.
Oh man, yeah.
And he's funny.
He's my life coach. Actually, that's not true because I am a fat motherfucker. And I always remember, I can't remember what the speaking CD this was from, but he was making a joke of he's laying in bed in the hotel room in Arizona, after shooting for a film, going, okay, I'm exhausted, I'm here in the AC, but if I don't get up and I don't put on the shorts, and I, if I get up, I put on the shorts, I go to the gym, I will lift the weights, I will run, but otherwise I'm going to sit here, and then all of a sudden, you're 30 years old, you look like Jabba the Hutt and wondering what happened to your life. Like, oh God, that's where I am. So maybe I'll go see Henry Rollins and get him to slap me in the face. I failed you.
He's a fascinating person to listen to be interviewed.
Oh, yeah. He had on IFC, International Independent Film Channel. Do you remember the IFC? I don't even know if it's still around.
Yeah, I used to DVR a lot of shows on that channel.
He had a show on there that was phenomenal. Letters from Henry were some of the best bits I've ever heard in my life.
I'll have to get a hold of that.
Henry Rollins' letter to Ann Coulter. It's a little bit... It's dated. Do you remember Ann Coulter?
Yeah, of course.
Good. That's one of my favorite questions to ask now, because most people, I ask, do you remember Ann Coulter? No? Good. History has forgotten her.
No, I think she still might show up on Bill Maher's show.
Oh, no, nobody knows who... The vast majority of people that I talk to don't know who she is anymore, and I love it.
Yes,
I revel in her continuing and growing obscurity.
I'm sure she does the right-wing talk radio rounds.
Oh, I'm sure she does too.
Yeah, I had a nice introduction to right-wing talk radio. I used to be a pharmacist assistant briefly, and the pharmacist that I work with listened to Rush Limbaugh. Oh, and it's like, oh, please, no. And then and the pharmacist would sit there and argue with the radio. Those people are the best. I had a coworker that used to, he would complain that I listened to talk radio, and then he would argue with my radio for half the shift, and it got to the point to where they actually had to move him into a building and work by himself because he scared everybody.
See, that's why I love being out where I am. I'm alone out there. I yell at my radio constantly. All right, I'll have I like to torture myself, so I'll watch a Lacey Green video and just no, that you're adorable, but what you just said was really fucked up, and here's why. Lacey Green is another one of the MTV personalities, I guess we'll call them.
I haven't watched anything on MTV since they brought Beavis and Butthead back briefly.
The man's a prophet.
Yes, in 1996, he came.
Mike Judge, peace be about him.
He came out of his time machine and brought us that documentary, Idiocracy, and it was pure brilliance in Office Space. Oh, yeah. Oh, I really wish that Camacho was on the ticket this year, and Vermin Supreme. Because we all deserve
Is
a
Vermin
pony.
Supreme not on the ticket this year?
I think he was running as a Democrat. He might be on some ballots.
Okay, I wrote it in the last election cycle. I absolutely did. I hated everybody. I hated like even more so now.
Yeah, this one,
I'm still voting. I'm still putting a libertarian in my ticket because if we can just scrape 20% of the popular vote away, it'll make them pay attention. It'll be enough to slap them in the face.
Well, it's refreshing this election. I'm noticing a lot more people are willing to not throw their vote away and go third party. A lot more people.
Biggest lie. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people are, they don't like Trump and Clinton, and they don't want to have to pick one of them. And I am one of them. I don't know if I'm going to vote for Gary Johnson, a libertarian, because I usually vote libertarian, or Jill Stein from the Green Party.
Fault on me, honestly, I just don't know enough about her, and the only thing I remember from the Green Party was Ralph Nader back in the day.
Yep, and he stole votes away and handed that election over to George W. Bush.
Because it was him, W, and Inconvenient Truth guy, who pretends he's a scientist. I am not a global climate change science denier. I'm very much into science, and yes, the warming of the earth and climate change, human-caused climate change, is a thing. But what Al Bundy? Al Gore, thank you.
I wish Al Bundy was running.
I know, right? What Al Gore did and is doing is flat-out fear-mongering. And even the real climate change scientists are looking at the sort of media scare and the letters to the government saying, we need to stop this now. Even they're saying, calm the fuck down. Like, yes, global climate change is a thing, but 2012 was a fucking movie. Potholer 54, if you're looking YouTube channel, if you were looking for fantastic, solid scientific takedowns of both sides, both extremes of the climate debate, and my favorite flat earthers.
Oh, that just popped in my head, man.
Oh man, I am not going to speak on it because it has to do with a lot of math, which I am just not capable of comprehending. But I also don't make up bullshit when I don't comprehend math, like the flat earthers do.
Yep, and there's an entire podcast dedicated to it.
There's so many YouTube channels. I don't want to talk about flat earthers. Because my entire contribution will be this guy's channel. He has diagrams and like animated, animations of the math. So like that's going to be the whole of my contribution to the flat earth argument.
Back to our subject of Mediaopoly.
Hey! But even with the platforms that the alternative media has, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Google+, nobody uses Google+. And even these corporate elements are seeping into it, like ad revenue from YouTube. And there's a little bit of, I think there is a little bit of a...
Are you a skip ad man kind of guy?
That thoroughly depends on who I'm watching.
Okay.
the ones that I've subscribed to that I enjoy, yeah, I'll watch the full ad. If I'm searching through and I don't know the person's content, I'll skip the ad until I know the person.
Does that affect how they get compensated?
Yes.
Oh.
Yep. If the...
Oh, I feel guilty.
Yeah, if... they'll get more money if you watch the full ad, especially if it's a longer ad, like a 30-second or even a minute ad opposed to the 15-second one. I think they might still they might even still get a little bit of revenue if you skip like more than halfway through. I'm not sure exactly how it works, and the way I understand too is even YouTube is a little dodgy about how exactly how their ad revenue works. But I think there's still more of that insulation from these YouTubers that have access to Patreon accounts, where they say, if you like me, send me $1, or whatever it is that you want to give them, and they're funded by their audience alone. They might have perks for the people who are
Yeah, David Packman.
They might have perks for their Patreon givers. But it's not in the same way that a corporation that gives large sums of money to one channel does. And even the ads that are run on YouTube channels, they don't get to pick those ads. They just simply sign up for the monetizing, and YouTube runs the ads tailored to the advertisement habits of the user. But I think even this is eroding away in a lot of ways. YouTube recently put up a policy where they are cutting ad revenue. They won't allow users to monetize on fingers quotes controversial videos. And like with many things on YouTube, this is not universally applied either.
Yeah, you think that depends on how many people complain?
It absolutely does. YouTube has just a black hood of a report policy. If your video is reported, you don't get to see the reasons for it. It's just, you got a community guideline strike, and that's it. And like, I think you're shut down for a couple of weeks, and you have like 200 characters to explain why what you said isn't hate speech or isn't bullying, because most of the time what's happening is people are saying, oh, it's a differing opinion, and they can anonymously flag your video for bullying or hate speech when it has nothing to do with it at all. And that's happened to a number of the YouTubers that I watch. Their videos are anonymously flagged. Sometimes you can flag a video for harassment or bullying on behalf of someone else. You don't even have to be the target of the alleged attack, but you can flag it on behalf of someone else and it will still stand.
Has anybody been taken down permanently that you know of?
The only one that I know, well, technically once you're banned from YouTube, you're banned, you can't have another account. But there are individuals who just continue to make accounts. Anybody who's listening who doesn't know who Jenny McDermott is, she is a constant violator of YouTube's community guidelines, and has had some umpteen odd accounts that have been banned because like she'll release people's information, like names, addresses. She made a slanderous rape allegation against another YouTuber, but she just gets another account. Who's the other guy? I can't remember his name. I only just became aware of him.
Mark Dice?
That doesn't sound familiar. I can't remember his name.
He does like idiot on the street interviews.
Oh, yeah.
And he gets people to sign petitions that are completely insane.
The so-called social experiment.
Yes.
Yeah, I fucking hate those channels.
But he also, he's an author, and some of the work that he covers is about the Illuminati and the entertainment industry.
Mm-hmm.
His idiot on the street interviews are entertaining, but when the way he presents his other material is with anger. That turns me off.
Well, but most of those, most of those, they don't even call them prank channels. They use the nebulous term social experiment. I hate that so much. You're not an experiment. You're not a fucking scientist.
There's kids who went to jail for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, well, a lot of them are scripted too, though.
Yeah.
So that's why they're not getting their faces bashed in by some of the things that they do. They're hired actors. Keemstar's going to come get me now. God, no, I'm not going to get into how much I know about YouTube drama because I'm actually pretty ashamed about how much I feed into YouTube drama.
Are you one of them trolls?
No,
Okay.
no. I have the human boredom gene, and so I get bored and I watch drama occasionally, and I'm not proud of it. I am an addict. I'm not an addict, like I said, but gentleman by the name Milo Yiannopoulos was banned from permanently banned from Twitter for not necessarily his tweets towards
One of the stars of the new Ghostbusters, Leslie Jones.
but there was she was receiving actual harassment. Like if you look through some of the tweets that were sent her way, it was constantly nonstop. Some very racist things, and she was getting actual harassment. And he sent her in the midst of this. Sent her a couple of tweets like, people get internet, hey, grow thicker skin, grow the fuck up, or get off Twitter. Like this is the internet. This is just what happens. There's and other people were giving her the same advice, saying, let the shit blow over, just stop feeding the trolls, because she was going in and responding in very aggressive ways that, sorry, it's the internet, and internet trolls are a thing, and they feed off of that kind of aggression. The only thing to do is to close your laptop, turn off your Twitter, and let it settle for 24 hours, and just get out of there. You don't have to look at that. But he was banned for supposedly instigating it, even though he had nothing to do with the start. He came in like 48 hours later into this whole fiasco. But he is a very controversial figure, especially amongst the social justice warriors, leftists, progressive culture, social justice warrior, progressive leftists that are all over social media. He had his Dangerous Faggot Campus Tour. Milo Yiannopoulos is an openly gay conservative speaker, and he would come and speak for conservative student unions, Republican student affiliations on campus at their requests. It was funded by the not funded by the universities themselves, but funded by the student groups. But the massive amounts of protests that came into to protest his public events, you didn't have to come in there, was insane. Look up Trigglypuff for that other comedian. Shoot. Crowder. Louder with Crowder. Louder with Crowder is another podcast. He's pretty abrasive, but he's a comedian. And sorry, being offensive is funny. Louder with Crowder was a guest with him, but he goes to say things like feminism is cancer, and this pisses a lot of people off. So he is a controversial figure to begin with. Got in the middle of what was undeniably a harassment situation. And because he was the biggest name and the most controversial figure, he was permanently banned for it and blamed with instigating, which he didn't deserve, I don't think.
A lot of these, like YouTube and Twitter, they're websites, so somebody owns those websites. So, the free speech aspect doesn't necessarily count.
I've heard this before. This challenges my libertarian ideas. Like, yeah, somebody owns this website and they get to choose, even though it's a, quote, public platform, it's a privately owned company. They do get to decide what goes on and comes off. And so this does challenge my, very libertarian views on, well, where's the divide between free speech and a right to for someone to have control over the content of their own company.
I'm a free speech advocate. It's just one of those things where you can't control these companies, especially as big and as large as they are. Just like, Fox News gets to have their crazy right-wing hosts. They're owned by Rupert Murdoch, so of course they're gonna give his viewpoint. And CNN's owned by Time Warner, and they lean a little bit to the left, although lately I noticed they've had a libertarian town hall with Gary Johnson.
Yeah.
They've had Jill Stein from the Green Party on there, and it's like...
They might be opening up a little bit.
I might have something to do with ratings, because they used to lean to the left, and then they started hiring right-wing personalities like Van Jones and Newt Gingrich, and I think because their ratings weren't doing that well, they tried to shake things up, but then they lost even more viewers, and so they're like, oh man, we got to do something different, and so they're starting to lean towards the third party.
Yeah, and I think this is where I find the beauty of the internet. Two guys like you and I can sit down, scream into a microphone for an hour and a half and put it up online. We might say some controversial things and have some beyond normal views, but in the end there are other video hosting sites to go to. There are other podcast sites to go to if one doesn't bite. Shoot, if you're tech savvy enough, start your own. And if you want that unabashed free speech platform, you market your own. The internet's the new frontier. It's the new Wild West. Twitter gets shut down. It's absolutely possible for Twitter to go the way of MySpace.
MySpace.
Look how huge MySpace was.
And everybody flocked overnight to Facebook.
Instantly.
It was like, we didn't even vote on it. It was like, MySpace was too complex. They tried too hard.
Well, I think there are just as many issues with Facebook as there was with MySpace. Facebook can limit how many of your posts actually go out to other people's feeds, even the ones that follow you, unless you pay into their company. Twitter is doing a very similar thing where you can tweet things out. There's things like shadow banning with both Twitter and Facebook, where you can be putting things out there and tweeting, but none of your followers will actually receive those tweets unless they go specifically to your page to look, which most people don't do. They just look at their feed. But all it takes is another group of guys with a good idea and it's a good amount of marketing, which is easy enough to do on the Wild West that's the internet. Please let it stay that way. To fight that. It's the ultimate free market.
Yeah, and I'm glad that the internet is the wild, wild west, because I actually get to talk to people who have different views and have reasonable conversations.
If they'll talk to you.
Yeah, many will, and sometimes I want to know, why do you feel this way? Why do you feel that way? And I don't think I've ever gotten into an all-out knock 'em out, drag 'em fight with anybody.
Yeah.
Online.
That's what I found in most of the live stream events that I've watched. There'll be the response videos where the person in the response video will be very aggressive, very mocking towards the person that they're addressing. There was prominent feminist YouTuber Marina Shut Up and a fairly new anti-feminist YouTuber Barry, who's a cartoon brown bear from Australia. Again, well, his response videos are usually very funny, but very offensive at the same time. Specifically pushing the buttons of whoever it is that he is responding to. But their live stream together was remarkably civil. Now, I think she said things on the live stream that were, that made me go, oh my God, no, you're a terrible person. You can't, I can't get behind that. She had said that she made the claim that free speech rights in the Constitution were not to protect individual free speech. It was to protect people from prosecution by the government. No. Let's clear this up. Everything in the Constitutional Bill of Rights is absolutely geared towards the rights of the individual. It was intended that way from the beginning, and it's written out that way within the Constitution itself. Individual rights are the foundation of the U.S. society. And during this, while she said things that, quite honestly, I found abhorrent, and you would call her out on it, but again, in a way where two people talking to each other actually do. Whereas if you have this sort of divide between them, where, I'm not actually talking to a person, I'm talking to a video, it's much more easy to be dismissive and callous towards that video rather than it is the person.
Yeah, some of the shows where they have panels on with people with opposing views, it turns into shouting matches to where you can't even hear what they're saying. They never even get to finish their points half the time. Mm-hmm. Bill Maher's show, Real Time, is infamous for that. Oh,
I don't know how I feel about Bill Maher anymore.
He's funny. He's very biased.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the problem with most of the corporate media is the bias. And they don't have enough civil conversations. And they have their talking points, and a lot of times it's to reinforce their viewpoint. And the people who eat that stuff up, the people that watch the Fox News and MSNBC, they might be watching it to reinforce their own viewpoint.
Yeah.
And, they might not actually get to learn that much new.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate. There's some media personalities that do work in the mainstream media who actually do get to make outside of the regular talking points, like Ben Swan. He has a website, Truth in Media. He's also a local newsman.
Oh.
So I believe in Cincinnati.
Okay.
And he is very, very relevant. Excellent journalist. So sometimes they do get to work in the system and get away with a little bit more. Jake Tapper on CNN's been getting a little more outside the box recently. Mm-hmm. And people are getting like, oh my God, are they going to fire him? And maybe it's, well, they're getting ratings, so keep them.
Yeah, those all important ratings, especially now when, like us, we haven't had proper TV in over 5 years.
Yeah, I remember we have regular local cable.
Oh, we don't even have
that. We get to watch the Olympics. But yeah, I miss getting to watch, because I don't want to pay an extra $30-$40 a month just to get to watch my local sports teams all the time. Mm-hmm. But that comes down to a money thing.
Yeah.
back in the day, I had the full cable package, and I was just a TV junkie. But I don't think television is entertaining as it used to be, especially since things have moved over to YouTube and Hulu and Netflix, and it's changed the game.
Absolutely. I mean, you have complete control over the content that you go into. Oh, that's where I was going. The same thing can happen on the internet, where the videos and podcasts that are recommended to you are based on things that you have previously watched, so that you end up, just by virtue of the recommendations, that you end up continually watching, or I hate the word consuming, but consuming the same sort of information that you did before. And it is self-reinforcing. It is an echo chamber, and you have to have the strength and the recognition that you have to seek out those alternative views. You have to seek out those disagreements and those directly opposing viewpoints and expose yourself to those. If at least so that you can argue to those points, rather than argue to those points and the ideas directly, rather than argue against what those points become in other arguments. It is essentially protecting yourself from the straw man fallacies, where you take an exaggerated or an incorrect where you take an incorrect or exaggerated representation of an actual argument and fight against that and say, oh, look, see, I beat it. And it wasn't a real construct to begin with. So at the very least, to strengthen your own abilities in debate and your own arguments, and it might challenge your views, and you might find that some of your views need that challenging. You have to be strong enough to be able to go out there and face those.
That's why I keep my mind moldable like Play-Doh. I always challenge my own viewpoints, and I don't get offended if somebody corrects me. It makes me happy. Like, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm glad that somebody pointed that out, because I could have been going around, spewing bullshit for years, and no one's correcting me, and I might be misinforming them people, and they might believe that, and then they go and spread it.
And listeners, feel free, if you heard something that you think is bullshit from us, tell us why. Facebook, Beyond Normal Views. Twitter, Beyond_Norm, and YouTube,
Beyond Normal Views.
Let's start a flame war in the comments. Subscribe to our channel, please. That Patreon page is still coming.
Yes. 3 listeners can't be wrong, as Rob Wolf says. Another one of my favorite podcasters, but he does paleo and health talk.
Oh, okay.
I'm a nerd for
clearly
that kind of
something
stuff.
I'm not interested in.
You got to start somewhere.
Yeah. I listen to side scrollers, so that's video game nerd podcast.
We got to have our mind candy.
Yeah.
Everything can't be serious all the time. Yeah. You're going to go freaking crazy and end up like Alex Jones.
Oh my God, I've almost gone crazy doing this already. Thank you for listening. I hope you've enjoyed your time with us. Again, Facebook, Twitter, Google+, YouTube. No, Google+. Let us know what you think. Like, comment, subscribe, follow. Put a finger in the butt.
But yeah!
Give us a poke.
Don't be afraid to dare to be different, and please try to make your views beyond normal.
Thanks for listening. Have a good night.